I'll just wait a moment watching the participant numbers while people are joining us. Okay, and I think we can just start with the introduction. So welcome everyone. The Safer Roads and Speeds for Powered Two-Wheelers, the Indonesian Challenges presentation of the Australasian College of Road Safety International Outreach Chapter. For many of our lower middle income country partners in our chapter, of course, the powered two-wheelers are the most common motor vehicle and therefore crash vehicle, and leading to the road injuries in their countries. And Australia, the motorcycling popularity continues to keep increasing, and we have much to learn from countries that have focused in this area. We have two speakers today. The first will be Dr. Tri Tarjana. He is joining us from the University of Indonesia with over 40 years of experience in transport safety and highway traffic engineering. Until recently, he was chair for the transportation section of the Department of Civil and Environment Engineering at the university, and has published in a large number of research journals and conference papers on road safety. He is currently a road safety advisor to many government and non-government organisations, and is joining us today with Dr. Shane Turner from ABLE on their KIAT project, with KIAT being a partnership between the Australian and the Indonesian governments, looking particularly into safer road infrastructure and other ways to improve policy and efficiencies for Indonesia. So Dr. Turner is a safe systems specialist at ABLE with over 30 years of experience in strategic and applied road safety strategies and studies and road safety research. He is an adjunct senior fellow at the University of Canterbury and on the editorial board of Transportation Research Record of the US, which many will be familiar with through the Transportation Research Board meeting. Shane's experience includes safety projects in many countries, including this one in Indonesia for the KIAT aid-funded project IRAMS DC since 2020. And I'm sure we'll learn more about what that's all about with our presentation. So would you like to start, Dr. Tri?
Thank you. Welcome, everybody. So, to make better, I will stop my video first and then I share the screen. My screen is already up here?
Yes.
Okay. This is the first part of our discussion today. First of all, I will inform the situation of the road crash associated with the two-wheeler in Indonesia, and also concentrate also with the youngster, the children and teenagers in Indonesia. And secondly, very quickly, two projects that we carry out at my university. First, about the ABS with Bosch, and the other is retroreflective with the 3M Indonesia. So basically, starting the exposure of motorcycles in Indonesia. In Indonesia, 84% motorcycles are on our roads. So basically, if you look the left bottom graph, it see that every year the wholesales of PTWs in Indonesia is more than about 5 million, except during 2020. That is the really the COVID-19 pandemic. Indonesia also locked down about 6 months. So this is a lower one at the moment. So basically, it's not surprisingly if PTWs is the major road crash and fatalities in Indonesia. And 75% of the motorcycles in Indonesia is a scooters less than 125 cc engine. And actually, it's not too much the big motorcycles. It's different, like in UK, for example, motorcycle is dominate the big motorcycle and more for leisure rather for daily life. Road accidents in Indonesia is also pretty high, but the result from Decade of Road Safety Action 2011-2020, Indonesia can reduce 45% of fatalities. However, this is also contributed by the COVID-19 pandemic. And in 2022, the fatalities in Indonesia, this the interim, is already reaching 27,897 deaths on Indonesian road, in which 566, or 1/3 of them, is the fatality between age 10 to 19. And also in Indonesia, mostly motorcycle, they're not having a driving license on the roads. 70% of motorcycle owner, they riding the motorcycle without a driving license. This is also the problem. And if we look to the bottom left graph, there is about 10 to 14 years old unlicensed also involved as the preparatory to the accidents. This is so the big problem in Indonesia related to the youngster. For example, in Indonesia, the road accident associated with the motorcycle, the fatalities, is about 76%. If we compare to Malaysia, they only have say 59%. If we look the publication before 2015, Malaysia is still the highest motorcycle accident compared to Indonesia. But nowadays, I think Indonesia is the highest in the world. About 76% fatalities associated with the motorcycles. This is the problem. And also, from the project in Eastern Indonesian roads, funded by the government of Australia, we carry out a study that increasing proportion of motorcycle on the roads is also increasing the fatality rates. So again, this is an issue about the motorcycles in Indonesia. We have more detail about the motorcycle, and this is thanks to the research by Bosch for ABS. At the moment in Indonesia, motorcycle didn't fit by ABS at all, except the big engine motorcycle. So basically, we have this one, and then collision involving two pedestrian is the highest one. Sorry, single vehicle collision is the highest one, and the other one is the rear end collision, head-on collision, and collision with a pedestrian. So this is the important things that we have things about the how motorcycle challenging in our roads, because the situation is dominated everything with the motorcycles. Again, if you go to the children, it's road always as a children playground in Indonesia. This is very important things. And this is from the Ministry of Health research. Basically, the typology is the same when still between 1 to 4 more accident occur in home. But as soon as 5 and 14 in Indonesia, goes to school, but the most is already on roads. So this is very quick after they reaching 6 years old above, they use road as the playground, and then they also think that motorcycle become a playthings. This is the important issue that we must raise if we want to successful to reduce the fatality in 2030 by 50%. So this is type of on the roads, mostly because of power two-wheelers. And second, surprisingly, Indonesia is used by the trucks, HGV. But the problem, children sometimes, if they want to go to school or return school or play, they just try to jump every empty trucks. So this is very dangerous. So this is also the issue with the children. But today we discuss about the PTWs. And from this one, about 27%, the causality because of the children is as a perpetrator of the accidents. So this is also important thing. We raise this one. And if we look, the detail is quite high, the number of children between age 10 to 19 is about 1/3 of the total fatalities rate in Indonesia. And this another thing, if we look the magnitude of children road accident associated PTW in major urban areas, in particular we concentrate with the 5 biggest cities in Indonesia, outside Jakarta, Bandung, Surabaya, Makassar, Semarang, and Medan. We can see that mostly problem is again about the children using road as a playthings, and this is very important. And in these 5 big cities, mostly accident caused by the motorcycles, and second, using the public transport, in particular paratransit. So this is based on the Bandung study for Save the Children. So we need this one. In 2016, my laboratory actually tried to make something like addressing the problem with child. So we established something like highway codes for parents, for example, to make understand if they're crossing the road, please the children walk on the left of the parents, as well as they want to crossing the road, start on the left, then in the middle, the parents move the other part. So the idea, every time the children must be protected by their parent. At the moment in Indonesia, we don't have a self-donate to school program intensively. It's already started, but in Indonesia, the Safe School Zone is already a program by the Ministry of Transportation of Indonesia. This is an example, the accident on the rural roads in Indonesia. You can see that if you look this one, of course, first, involve underage. Second, no license. Third, downhill. Fourth, automatic gear scooter, so they don't have a possibility to make engine brake. They know anti-brake, anti-locking brake system, and there's no in Indonesia motorcycle riding school at all. In Indonesia, learning riding motorcycle is learning by doing, or even a parent for underage already trained them. And this is, of course, the black spot junction, poor geometric design, and no warning sign. So this is a lot of associated with the problem in Indonesia. And we agree that Indonesia power two-wheeler is already a part of Indonesian daily life, because one motorcycle is for 2.3 person on average, and one household on average having a 1.3 motorcycles. And motorcycle is not just for transportation mean, and also I already explained for kids using as a playthings, but for the business, this is like a motorcycle cafe, and also riding hailing. If you go to big city Indonesia, is common look the rider wearing the green jacket. This is for motorcycle riding hailing, and then they use they design themselves become also three-wheelers for every activities. And we have a study in two schools in municipality of Depok, outskirts southern part of Jakarta, where University of Indonesia campus in Depok. First, parents with children riding motorcycle to school, usually very few they're not using helmet. Only 33% children using helmet. And surprisingly also, the mean of the over capacity here, motorcycles sometimes one adult with up to 3 children, because maybe they have a sibling in the same school, they go together. And secondly, parents already introduce and teach their children of riding PTW motorcycle starting age 10 years old, 11 and 12. So basically, this is already parent business. They are happy if the kids already able to riding motorcycles. Sometimes the children in Indonesia helping their mom riding motorcycle to the market. This is very common in Indonesia, and of course they're not wearing a helmet. And as a result, children 10 and 12 already exposure riding PTWs on their own without parent consent. Because if a lot of children, if you look the motorcycle not in use in their home, usually in particular also during late afternoon, they take it like it's this photograph. This is a situation in Indonesia. So I have two research directly for making better PTWs safety. First, improving visibility using Type 11 ASEAN standard retroeffective sight and marking on mountainous highway black spot. This road is a black spot, and also is what is happened is the most worst road crashes, one of the most worst crashes in Indonesia, with 27 fatality on the bus because they hit motorcycle. So the A is the bus, it was bus, and B is motorcycle, and 13 heavy injury and 9 light injuries. This is the site where we carry out this study. And the result of this study, the night is making a better reflective. So this is before daytime, before nighttime, and then after nighttime. And the result, quite interesting, that all vehicles, including motorcycle, comply with the speed limit. Due to the improvement of visibility, the confidence level was slightly increased for the driver to drive faster within the speed limit. In this road, because the black spot, the maximum speed already set 40 kilometers per hour. So this is when we interview the respondent, mostly the motorcycle riders, they are happy with this one. So they make more confident that before. Sometimes they feel the situation is very dark and there's no delineation that they can trust it to riding the motorbikes. Second is the ABS. This is with the boss. We first of all we try to establish a type of accident related with the motorcycle that can be improved if the motorcycle fitted by the ABS. So we come across about 76% of motorcycle crash in Indonesia between 2016 and 2018. They can be improved and avoid the crash. At least maybe it's not the crash, but also avoid the consequence of injuries or even death. So this is a result of the studies. Why we can come across this one? First of all, we copy and paste a study, a same thing in India. It's called RASI. It's also a support boss with the Indian police. And then the idea we try to, this template try to check in Indonesia, because the data in Indonesia is more bigger than in India. So we can see about the differences between India and Indonesia. This is example for accident type, rear end accident. So back again, 70% ABS-driven collision, and from the study, at least minimum benefit is about 10%, and we can lift up to 27% benefit of PW ABS. The problem in Indonesia, people tend to brake only using the rear brake. Front brake, they never do that. The best one, actually, they must do both. So this one is a difficult one, because if single channel ABS fitted to motorcycle, and then the idea using the front wheel first. This is a problem in Indonesia. So thank you. That's all of my presentation.
You're on mute.
I think you're mute.
Thank you. I meant to point out at the beginning, everyone, questions will be at the end. There is a Q&A box that we will discuss at the end. In the meantime, the chat box is available if you wanted to chat amongst yourselves, but I'll be monitoring the Q&A for the end of the presentation, just to keep us on time. Dr. Turner, over to you.
Yes, hi everybody. Good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you are in the world. I'll just share my screen. So hopefully you can see my screen. I'm sure Teresa will tell me if you can't. As she mentioned, both Tri and myself have been working on this KIAT study in Indonesia, and a lot of that has been looking at crash black spots and how we can make some of those sites safer in terms of the road layout. Now, I acknowledge, particularly given what Tri has already shared with us, that obviously the solution in terms of trying to improve safety for power two-wheelers is not all about infrastructure. Infrastructure is part of the solution, part of one of the safe system pillars that we need to look at, and an area where there are sort of lots of gaps in knowledge. I don't think there's been the research or analysis in low and middle income countries to really fully understand in detail the problem and how infrastructure can be used to improve safety. But as I said, I acknowledge that there's a lot of other things you need to do, like around the vehicle and the road user behaviour, that are really important, as they are anywhere where safe system approach is being used. I'm not going to show a lot of statistics because Patri did a really good job of showing the statistics on the crash issue in Indonesia. I'm going to focus a bit more on the bigger picture in my one statistic slide, but as you can see from this slide, motorized 2 or 3 wheelers, powered 2-wheelers, they contribute about 30% of fatal crashes globally in terms of the 1.35 million people that are killed. But when you look at Southeast Asia, they're a much bigger part of the problem. And as the statistic showed, about 70% or more of the fatal and serious crashes in Indonesia involve powered 2-wheelers, people on powered 2-wheelers, and there's quite a big chunk of pedestrians as well. So that about 93% of crashes in Indonesia involve vulnerable road users. And, you know, that compares with relatively small percentage of deaths that involve motorcyclists in Europe, which is pretty close to the levels that we have in New Zealand and Australia. So one really useful guide in terms of looking at safety for powered 2-wheelers is the powered 2 and 3-wheelers safety guide that's been put together by WHO. And if you look in that guide, which has just had its 2nd edition released, you'll show a very small section really that talks about safety measures in terms of safer roads for motorcyclists. And of the measures, only one of those measures is proven in terms of being effective, and that's exclusive motorcycle lanes. And that's thanks to studies that have been happening in Malaysia that have looked at that. But there are some promising treatments that are already being applied. Their effectiveness is not fully quantified. So prohibiting turning lanes or protected turning lanes and widened shoulders. So giving the cyclists more space, particularly when turning, is really important. Removal of roadside hazards. So when they end up on the roadside, they're less likely to be killed by a hazard. Speed limiters and traffic calming structures, but you have to be very careful with those because they can also create a hazard for motorcyclists if they can't clearly see them. And improving road surfacing conditions is also one of the very promising measures, and one that's an important area to get right in terms of these countries with lots of powered 2-wheelers. And another area which is doesn't have a lot of penetration in these types of countries, but is to design roadside barriers with rub rails and such like to reduce the severity when motorcyclists hit those type of barrier systems. And this comment down here on speed limits and traffic calming is just really warning you that the traffic calming devices themselves can be a hazard. So while they may be put in to try and slow down motorcyclists, they may actually cause crashes if not done well. So some other stuff that's in that guide, that powered 2-wheeler crashes are higher on curves, bends, slip roads, and roundabouts. And roundabouts, obviously, in developed countries are considered quite a key treatment in terms of safe system and reducing crashes, particularly on rural roads. But they can be quite hazardous for powered 2-wheelers, so they have to be designed very carefully. Road surfacing is also very important for better grip, with only 2 wheels rather than 4 or 3 wheels in some cases. The layout of intersections is really important. There needs to be space provided for powered 2-wheelers at those intersections, and they need to be visible. And road shoulders are important to avoid the motorcyclists getting squeezed along the road. And I've got some examples of that for some black spots that we've looked at. So there's also, quoted in there, a Malaysian study of 36 intersection that showed how exclusive or protected turning lanes reduce rear-end powered 2-wheeler crashes. So rear-end and head-on, which Patri mentioned, are 2 of the key crash types that we need to address, and the rear-end one is quite difficult to address. So that's one of the options to deal with that. The study also showed that 25% more motorcycle crashes occur at intersections without shoulders. That adequate visibility and signage on road condition ahead at intersection is really important for riders to manage their speeds. So in a number of locations, like at traffic signals, it's really difficult sometimes to see the signal ahead because there are only a few of them and some of them aren't working and there's visibility problems. So it's really important that people can see the intersection ahead and react in terms of reducing rear-end crashes, and large vehicles and vegetation can hide motorcyclists. And on the mid-block, wider lanes and more lanes is reduces less crashes. So I put together this usage levels chart that shows as the proportion of the various proportions of powered two-wheelers that occur can occur in different countries. And this is a chart that I recently put together looking at different cities around the world and giving some consideration to what interventions could be applied at these different levels. So in Australasian cities and in New Zealand cities, we're generally in this low level, so we're not looking at exclusive motorcycle lanes. And we can see that some European cities, the motorcycle volumes are getting up, and in some cases even at greater than 20%. And when the volumes are getting greater than sort of 20% of all vehicles, then it makes sense to start building motorcycle lanes and applying motorcycle boxes at intersections. And then, of course, we get into the very high sort of motorcycle usage cities, including Jakarta and Bali and Surabaya in Indonesia and in other parts of Southeast Asia. And in these cases, obviously, motorcycle lanes on their own aren't going to be sufficient because a lot of the vehicles are motorcycles, and we need to think about how do we design roads to actually accommodate the power two-wheelers. And so one of the suggestions that's been made is that maybe we treat vehicles on these very high percentages, where this percentages is 80–90% higher, as special vehicles like we do buses in our Australasian cities. So I'm interested to know your thoughts on this particular chart or table in terms of some of the measures that need to be applied as you're, depending on the volume of power two-wheelers you have in your city. Now, I think it's also relevant, and I know that Blair Turner has produced a document that provides advice around safety in all countries, including low and middle income countries, that some of the treatments that we have in the toolbox do apply, a lot do apply, but some maybe not, because of the differences between low and middle income countries like Indonesia and countries like Australia and New Zealand. So, but some of the things that are still apply, as the law of physics still apply. The energy transfer in a crash is the same. The human body's ability to withstand force is the same. Unprotected road users, which are 93%, as I said, of road users in Indonesia, are vulnerable, and speed kills and harms. Speed affects both the number and the severity of crashes. And so that's important to know that, and it's very hard to actually manage speed in a number of these countries. Pedestrians and other vulnerable users' behavior can be unpredictable. So pedestrians even in Western countries cross over where you wouldn't expect them to be. Sometimes they're impaired in some type of way. Some of the key things to take out of that: physical separation in users can be effective in all countries, irrespective of where you are. One-way streets significantly can reduce head-on risks, particularly in Indonesia. Speed humps and other vertical devices can slow down road users, but they can be a hazard for power two-wheelers. And maintaining a good quality pavement is really important. But the differences are in particularly some of these countries that drivers on average are less educated and have less driver training, as we heard from Patri. Often they have no training, formal training at all, and therefore their behaviour can be erratic because of that. and depending on the training they're getting from their parents. Victim blaming dominates. Indonesia has adopted the safe system approach, and therefore we need to move away from that victim blaming and look at the road environment. We need to look at the vehicles and how we can improve safety rather than just blaming the victims, particularly these young victims. Because of that, things like paint marking and signage is less likely to be obeyed. And so things like pedestrian crossings are less likely to be obeyed. And we see that a lot when we're driving around Indonesia, that people don't necessarily stop. People feel comfortable driving on the wrong side of the road to avoid congestion. And we have less facilities for vulnerable road users in these countries often, and they're not well used, and manual speed enforcement is less effective. So now I'm just going to talk through some of the different options that and some of the issues that we have identified in Indonesia. And so this map here is one of the approaches we used to identify where the high risks were. So this is a risk map based on some models that we developed. And as you'd expect, some of the most high risk roads, both in this case for vehicles, but also for pedestrians, tend to be in Java, where the large proportion of the population is. And where you look at the 900 or so black spots across the country, there are quite a lot of them also in Java and in Bali, which is where we mainly focused our black spot work in this last couple of years. So just looking at trends in terms of black spots, one of the key things we identified when we went through the 12 sites in Bali that we were particularly focused on, there were some trends that came out. And in terms of black spots, one of the key trends was that some of these route sections were very narrow and had no shoulders. And you could see illegal overtaking occurring, both of motorcycles crossing the center line to get past slower moving vehicles, sometimes on blind curves, and other places, even vehicles overtaking motorcyclists crossing the center line. And because of these narrow lane widths and lack of shoulders, there is it is very difficult and for vehicles to take evasive action if somebody is coming in the other direction. So this top left-hand one you can see in particular is very challenging. And if people are impatient and try and get past, then that can create safety hazards. The one on the right is also another black spot. We've shown on it some shoulders that would help in terms of providing a bit more space if vehicles have to take evasive action to avoid a head-on crash or to avoid rear-ending a vehicle. Now, the one on the bottom left, in one direction, you do have 2 lanes, which does kind of allow some overtaking and some evasive action, but not necessarily on the downhill. And on the right bottom is better, but the problem there is that that shoulder is not consistent along the whole route. So in places, a motorcyclist may think they've got extra space, but there may be hazards within that, or there are hazards within that shoulder environment. The other issue we find too is in some of these black spots we looked at is that the lanes are actually too wide and there isn't very good marking to show where the motorcyclist should be and where the vehicles should be. And so some of these roads, they're wide enough that 2 vehicles can go abreast, but also often motorcyclists are in the mix and sometimes get squeezed by these cross sections. So it's very useful to actually mark spaces where the motorcycle should be and the vehicle should be so that there's less confusion. And in some of these cases too, the speeds are quite high because of the lack of lane marking, and particularly where there's downhill grades. So these are types of situations where a bit more lane marking would be very useful. In some cases it is provided, but it's worn and hasn't been remarked. What is very common in Indonesia, I've already referred to it, is drivers driving on the wrong side of the road to overtake slower moving vehicles, particularly stopped at intersections, and often the motorcyclists will queue up on the wrong side of the road. And obviously, if there's vehicles coming the other way, the impact speed can be quite high. And so it is even the case that in some cases cars are overtaking slower moving vehicles to try and jump the queue. So that's a behaviour that we need to think about when we're designing to improve motorcycle safety. So medians are very popular, particularly on 4-lane roads, to try and reduce the amount of overtaking. The only issue with them, which I'll talk about in a minute, is how you accommodate U-turns. And then, of course, you have to realise that pedestrians will probably use them also to cross the road. And in this case, the top right-hand side, it's a massive section of road that person has to cross to get the safety of the footpath. So that's not necessarily a good safety outcome for pedestrians. The other treatment that's very useful and often not done for safety but for capacity reason is one-way streets, which effectively you have on each side of the median. And one-way streets, even though sometimes you get some contraflow cycling, are much safer because you take away that head-on risk in most cases. So one of the problems with putting in these medians is they're often quite narrow because they're rich fit to existing roads. And so what's really important is the way that the U-turning slots are designed, and if there's not enough room, they shouldn't be designed for vehicles. The vehicles should be required to U-turn at the signalised intersection rather than mid-block. So one key area is the design of these U-turn slots so that they're not causing a hazard, like in this case, where the driver in the outside lane had to avoid the vehicle trying to U-turn, and I saw a case where a motorcyclist nearly got collided with who was coming through on the left there. So talking about other treatments, so exclusive motorcycle lanes are becoming more popular, and they've been shown to have some really good reductions in Malaysia, and it's probably the most proven of all the treatments that we currently have in terms of safety, but it's not always possible to build them because of all the access ways along some of these streets. So you can build them along motorways and along some limited access roads, but generally on most roads, we're talking about the inclusive or non-exclusive motorcycle lanes, and there's real gap in knowledge about how effective these are in terms of reducing crashes. Particularly given if there's a lot of side roads and access ways, a bit like the issue with these types of facilities for bicycles in developed countries. So that's a real area of gap in knowledge. But as you can see at the bottom left there, it does actually generally provide indication of where the car should be and the motorcycle should be. So, but in this case, of course, the car is undertaking the motorcycle, but in most cases, the motorcyclists are using those lanes and vehicles can get past them if they're moving slow. Another thing that I was looking at when I was in Bali particularly was the use of gateway type of treatments, or treatments as you came into commercial areas or around schools. And my observation of these, the bottom left and bottom right, was they weren't very effective, the flush treatments. There were some rumble strips provided, and you've got to be careful with that with motorcycles, but they weren't that effective. They needed to be improved. I did find in Bali, outside the police headquarters, this raised platform, or two raised platforms here with zebra crossings on it, and they did seem to be a bit more effective in terms of motorcycles yielding to pedestrians than the flush treatment, as we know is effective in developed countries. And so on top there is the sort of standard treatment in the middle there with the raised platform for those mid-block crossings that we're using more and more in developed countries. And then there's a couple of other examples of other gateway treatments that might be a bit more effective in reducing speeds. But this is definitely an area where there could be improvements in terms of the way these are being applied in Indonesia. But it is good that in Bali that they are trying lots of different treatments. I think there just needs to be a bit more evaluation of those. Intersections are also a major issue, as any of you who will be into Asia will know, or who live over there, that accommodating motorcyclists at the intersection is very challenging. Motorcyclists like to be up the front, and then of course if they're up the front and there's not room provided, then they're obstructing pedestrians who are wanting to cross the road. And they often, if there's no medium provided, do queue up on the opposing traffic lane to help get a head start at the intersection. So, and even in cases where it's not just motorcyclists that are coming up the centre line, but you can see in this top left one, vehicles as well. So it's really important wherever possible at these major intersections to have a median to prevent drivers from sitting in that opposing lane and potentially the risk of head-on crash. These are some of the other types of treatments that are being trialled in Bali and other parts of Indonesia, and that's the use of these motorcycle bike boxes. The one in the middle there shows you with a lead up a motorcycle lane into it. And more old-fashioned one on the top left there that doesn't have that, but has an area for motorcycles. And then on the bottom right, the other thing that we're looking at is these sort of countdown signals. And one of the reasons for that is that they want to tell drivers when the red light's going to come up, because if they that they want the drivers to stop behind the motorcycle box. If the drivers don't have warning of the red light, then they may end up braking hard and ending up sitting in that motorcycle lane. So these countdowns to red and also to green have been installed to help get better compliance, and they show to get better compliance with larger vehicles not sitting in those motorcycle boxes. So they're a useful treatment. I suppose the verdict is out where you can use them, how effective they are, given the cost of them, but they're at least trialling some different types of measures that might improve safety for motorcyclists at intersections. One of the other things we notice also in Bali, and there've been traditionally a whole lot of roundabouts, and a lot of them have been signalised. So I'll just finish on this. The issue here was that sometimes and I think it's partly to do with the signals, that right turning vehicles actually go the wrong way around the roundabout. And so we know, because of motorcyclists, that's sketched on the top right, there's a lot of different trajectories they can take through the roundabout, but the design of these roundabouts should ideally direct all vehicles to be going to the left around the roundabout, not any going to the right. And some of that's to do also with the small size sometimes of these roundabouts. But roundabouts, I think signalised roundabouts, if they're designed well, can be effective. Roundabouts on their own, I don't think the experience in Indonesia is that, particularly in urban areas, are effective as standard roundabouts because of the just the lack of people stopping when they need to. This is my final slide, and I think these are a couple of examples of some interesting layouts which I like. This top one, the speed has been managed through this area. There's room for the motorcycles and the vehicles. In this case, you probably don't need to mark a motorcycle lane because the width of the road is too narrow for two vehicles to sit next to each other. And that's the problem when you get the width in a certain width where you can get two vehicles together and the motorcyclists can get squeezed. And the bottom left one with the two motorcycle lanes, one for the slower moving and one for the faster moving supposedly, and a lane for the vehicles, that's a one-way type of configuration, which I think works well. As I said, it removes the head-on risk, and if the motorcycles have got their own lane, then it helps reduce the rear end risk as well. All right, that's me. Sorry about the disruptions at the beginning, but we got through it. So thank you everyone for listening. Back to you, Teresa.
Thank you, and we appreciate you joining us in the evening in New Zealand time. Of course, it's a peak family time, so thank you. I have a couple of questions in the question box. The first one from Odd, which relate to the audio tactile line markings, which you did mention them just now, Shane, but whether there's been any studies on the impact of those markings, either by the side of the road or across the carriageway on motorcycles that you're aware of?
Not the ones along the shoulder. There's some transverse ones that they've used in different parts, like they use them a lot in Jakarta, and I noticed in Bali they use them on some of their underpasses as well. but I'm not aware of any evaluations of them. Are you aware of any evaluations of rumble strip treatments, Patri?
Basically, rumble strip treatment, particularly in the intersection, is make more dangerous for motorcycle chain. So there's many accidents occurs if the rumble strip is too much. At least very close to my home in southern part of Jakarta, there's a 3 rumble strip that become a part of the issue of the become a black spot. Actually, this is the problem because when the green time, usually motorcycles, the rider try to pass the intersection within the limited green time, so they ignore about the rumble strip. So this is very dangerous. Like red light running in Australia, they also usually with the high speed. So the same thing with the motorcycle in Indonesia.
Yeah, like the ones I've seen have always been on mid-blocks. So those ones that I was showing were past shopping areas or schools where they've been used as sort of gateway treatments. And it's the same with ones in Jakarta have been on mid-blocks, not on the approaches to intersections. So yeah, that doesn't seem to be something they do a lot in Indonesia, use it in intersections. And there's a good reason for that, as Patri said.
Okay, thanks. And thank you to Duncan McRae, who's posted in the chat a New South Wales report on motorcyclist perceptions of the line markings. Also, Dr. Tree, there's a question about is there information on the types of locations where these crashes mostly occur? Are they mainly in the city? Is there a large number outside of the cities? Or where do you think the most attention should be focused?
I think the issue is already spreading out in all of location in Indonesia, even in the remote areas. In the remote area, the proportion of motorcycles become something like 95%, 98%. So this is will happen everywhere. And Indonesia Database Integrated Road Safety Management (IRSM) has this possible to check because every accident there's a coordinate on it. And my understanding it's not just in the urban area. One of my study on the mountainous area, actually, the high proportion is the local people using motorcycle driving up and down the hill. So this is the issue in Indonesia.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was going to ask Shane. He mentioned about designing roads for the powered two-wheeler as the main vehicle, that about a 20% volume was where he was looking at in the table that there should be more roads designed. There's some debate here whether all roads, key roads, should be designed for the motorcycles to make them safer for everyone. I wondered if you had a comment about that.
Like, I think particularly when you get up to those high, sorry, I missed the beginning of the question, but when you get up to those high volumes of motorcyclists, then yeah, I'd agree with that, you know, putting in motorcycle lanes maybe are useful for the slower moving motorcycles, but most of the motorcycles are going to be in the general traffic lanes. But in those cities, and we're not really talking about Southeast Asian cities here because they generally do have quite high volumes, those cities which are more like that 20 to 40% or around that level, then I think motorcycle lanes can be very effective. And I know that in Malaysia, that's very effective. So, but yeah, once you get up to really high volumes, I think there needs to be more work done in terms of indicating how effective they are.
Thanks. And Sean Leonard's added a comment that the Motorcycle Council of New South Wales and Safe System Solutions did a one-day evaluation of audible line markings at the Centre for Road Safety facility a few years ago. So that's different to the link that was sent through earlier. But on that day, riders found no real issue with rumble strip in either wet or dry condition. So that's an interesting feedback. Thank you, Sean.
I think for this one, bear in your mind that Indonesia, mostly motorcycle is a small engine, and the wheel is quite slim compared big motorcycle. So this is very sensitive with the rumble strip. I think this is the important thing that we must aware. So basically, the best thing for motorcycle industry, because already high proportion, we must make thinking that the road actually should be for them first, rather than thinking still four-wheeler above. So slow lane is very important. We must give them a decent proportion on the right of way that they can do themselves in very low speed. So even this contraflow motorcycle on the slow lane is because it's already designed for the low speed. So if there's an accident, it's not become a serious accident. This is very important, I think. Actually, if you go to Yogyakarta, the ring road already proved this one. Yogyakarta ring road, they have a slow lane both side, and motorcycle must only use the slow lane, and the accident is still high, but the injuries and fatalities is not so high, because the speed be limited something like up to 30 kilometers per hour. But for urban, that is already enough. We don't need a high speed for motorcycle.
Thank you. And, you know, unfortunately, we're in the dying minute of the webinar, but Julian Kwong has added a comment too about the contradictory benefits of the roads, or might be different if it's a car versus a motorbike versus a heavy vehicle, for example, and how we look at these systematically. So I think that's a good one for us to reflect on. And as we close the seminar, I would like to invite members of the IOC executive to join following this meeting. I've sent a Teams link that we might have a brief meeting to follow, but thank everybody else for joining us. The recording will become available. It might take about a week, but there will be links to the presentations as well if people wanted to have copies of the PowerPoints. So thank you for everyone for joining us, and thank you to our speakers today for an insightful seminar. Thank you.